Breaking news, Liam Rosenior confirms he's verbally agreed to become Chelsea's new head coach. Manchester City are to weigh up a move for Crystal Palace centre-back Marc Guehi this month amid a defensive crisis at the Etihad. Hello there, welcome along to Good Morning Transfers. He missed out on a deadline day move, didn't he, to Liverpool in the summer. Could we see Marc Guehi on his way this window? We'll discuss that and much more in the company of former Newcastle and Burnley midfielder Jeff Hendrick and our very own Chris Reedy as well. West Ham are making moves in the window. 2 signings already, both strikers. Could that force Jeff's former teammate Callum Wilson out the door? Also coming up, Tottenham Hotspur boss Thomas Frank, who is once again asked about the club's decision to sell Brennan Johnson, with Spurs yet to bring in a replacement. And at 9:30, we'll hear from the Newcastle boss Eddie Howe as they prepare for Leeds in the Premier League tomorrow night. But let's start with that big breaking news. Liam Rosenior has confirmed this morning that he will become the new Chelsea head coach. We're awaiting official confirmation from Chelsea themselves, but speaking in the last few minutes at Strasbourg, he has said this, not signed yet, but he's verbally agreed a contract with Chelsea. He is only doing this news conference because of his love and admiration for Strasbourg, who of course play in the French Ligue 1. He says, I was given permission to speak to one of the biggest sporting clubs in the world. Liam goes on to say, it looks like I'm going to be the next manager of that football club, Chelsea, an opportunity that I cannot turn down. Jeff Hendrick, it's a big opportunity for him. He's a young coach, 41 years old. Just a bit of context as well. Last season in Ligue 1 in France, Strasbourg punching above their weight, part of Blue Coast, of course, connected with Chelsea, but only finished 3 points away from the Champions League places. Is this exciting from a Chelsea fan's point of view, do you think?
I think so, yeah. Like you said, Liam's gone and done the rounds. He's, learned his trade as a coach, then as a manager, and then going over there, probably took himself out of eyesight of everyone here in England. And like you said, he's done a great job. And, for this to come up, he'd be rubbing his hands together, the excitement to go and work with a top-class squad in Chelsea.
Yeah. Does it make a lot of sense, this, Chris, in terms of the players that he's already coached? I mean, Andre Santos, who's in that Chelsea midfield, speaks so highly of him. He was at Strasbourg on loan last season. Jordi Petrovic, of course, has since moved on from Chelsea, gone to Bournemouth. But a player that's coming in Emmanuel Emega as well. Whether Liam lasts that long, that's in the summer of 26. There's a lot of connections between the two clubs, and they think very highly of him at Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we know he's been in the Blue Coast system, so Chelsea have obviously had eyes on him for a while, but it's just not that he's just in the system, it's the job that he's done there as well. He's done such a fantastic job at Strasbourg, like you said, really close to actually getting in the Champions League last season. I think the fact, as Jeff alluded to there, is that he's worked his way up in, as a youth coach at Brighton. He's done the rounds at Derby as well, did a really good job at Hull, bit unlucky to get sacked there. So he's done his rounds as a coach. I think Wayne Rooney was talking about yesterday how good of a coach he is, and by being in that system, obviously Chelsea have had eyes on him for a while. So yeah, it's obviously a massive opportunity for him. I think they'll like the fact he's worked with young players all through his coaching career so far, especially at Brighton and at Hull, the likes of Fabio Carvalho did such a good job with as well. But yeah, it's a whole different step up to Chelsea, isn't it? But
well, that's what the cynics will say.
What a squad he's got to handle, mate.
Jeff, that's what they'll be saying, won't they? I mean, look, a lot of players that you played with at Derby when he was there with Wayne Rooney as a coach. It's one thing Derby and in League One at the time, going to the Championship. It's one thing Hull in the Championship. It's one thing Strasbourg in Ligue 1, away from the microscope of the Premier League. This is Chelsea. Yeah.
So he's going to be under fire if he doesn't, start off well. But I think the thing with Liam and knowing people who played with him and worked closely to him early in his coaching career, he's obsessed with the game. I think that, and for you to be a good coach or manager, that obsession, because the hours you have to put in it's crazy, really. And he's gone and done that for several years now. And to get an opportunity like this, I said he'll be loving it because he is willing to put them hours in and put the work in to build himself as a manager.
Yeah, and when you look at the games that he's got to come, I mean, it all comes thick and fast in the Premier League, especially a team that's competing in the Champions League. Up against his old team Fulham, he won't be in charge for that one. Callum McFarlane in the dugout for that tomorrow night. But That's not the worst run, Jeff, is it, to come into? And he's got an opportunity to get Chelsea into the top 8 of the Champions League. Paphos and Napoli currently just outside those top 8 places. You know, Arsenal, a League Cup semi-final with potentially Manchester City or Newcastle in the final. Silverware early doors, potentially.
Yeah, it'd be a dream start for him. There's some nice games on paper there, but then some also difficult ones as well. So I'm sure he'd be just eager to get on the pitch and start coaching, because, like we said there in Strasbourg, it was a young enough squad, and now coming into Chelsea, I think it's young and it's perfect and fits his style of coaching.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen what Chelsea do in the window, because I'm sure he will be excited, Liam Rosenior. I say Rosenior, by the way. People will be throwing things at the screen. That is actually how you say his name.
Let's
with his dad for 10 years.
Week.
Let's start it. Let's see if it sticks. I know people say Rosenior is Rosenior, but say what you like. Liam Rosenior looks like he's going to be the next Chelsea head coach. Let's move on, guys, and talk about Marc Guehi, because it's our understanding that Crystal Palace are expected to consider offers below last summer's asking price in January, with Manchester City set to have discussions about whether to bring forward their summer plans for a new centre-back this month. Chris, just firstly, bring us up to date with this contract situation that he's involved in now.
Yeah, look, so I think everyone knows about Marc Guehi's contract situation, but just to kind of reiterate, we know that ends at the end of the summer, so Marc Guehi will be able to leave on a free transfer. Because we're in January now, he is free to talk to foreign clubs as well, and we know that he's been interested. The clubs that are interested in him are the likes of Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, and others as well. But look, the main two that we've been talking about here at Sky Sports News has basically been Liverpool and Manchester City. Now, with these injuries that Manchester City have suffered in the last week, that's where this interest comes from, and that's where we seem to have seen it accelerate. Marc Guehi, though, he's got all these options open to him, and he's got so many different ways that he can play this. You know, like I said, he's free to talk to these foreign clubs. He's free to join Manchester City if they go and make an offer. We know Liverpool were close to signing him at the last day of the last transfer window. It was only for Igor Julio moving to West Ham from Crystal Palace that move kind of collapsed. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Jeff, I don't know if I know you actually did move on a free transfer. So,
yeah,
when you've got a player like this in January, what do you think's kind of going through his head? What do you think the right move to make is when you've got kind of all of these options open to you?
I think that's the main point. He's got that many options. He didn't get his move. How long did it take him to get over that? Who knows? But is he moving now in January because it suits Crystal Palace? And it might not suit him, so does he sit and wait? And for me, going to City, yeah, they've got an injury crisis pretty much, but I think if he stays at Palace, he plays every game. I think that's a massive thing going into the World Cup, and then who knows at City, and if Pep doesn't like him, he won't start every game, and he wants to be going into that squad.
Well, he might at the moment, Jeff, just purely because of the injury.
Just because of that, yeah.
You'll know more about fracturing a shin, which is apparently what Guardiola's done. That's not going to be back quickly, is it, for the Croatian? Obviously, Diaz limped off against Chelsea as well. Who needs him more, do you think, though, out of Liverpool and Manchester City?
Who needs him more? I would say Man City, definitely. I think he fits them a little bit more. Liverpool are coming under a lot of aerial attacks, and he probably won't want to go into a situation like that, going into City, maybe, who are, competing for titles this season a bit more than Liverpool. Probably will benefit him, and it'll look a bit more. Jeff, a little bit better.
If you're advising him as his mate or as his agent, what are you saying?
I'm not his agent, by the way, just so people know.
You're saying free transfer then. But if you're advising him now, like you said, a few months out to the World Cup, City potential Premier League winners, Liverpool, we know how much of a big club they are and what they can do in terms of future title challenges, current Premier League holders. What are you saying for him to do? Kind of football terms, but also kind of career terms, financial as well. What kind of makes sense?
I think obviously moving, he's going to get financial benefits, but for me, if I was him, I'd be telling him, sit still. You're leading Crystal Palace, you're playing every week, you're in Europe with them. Stay there, and then your options become even bigger and better in the summer. And that's what I'd say to him, yeah.
Do you see him, though, sticking around in the Premier League? Because, as Chris has said there, some of the big boys in Europe, all of the big boys, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the Inter Milans, the Atletico Madrids, all interested in potentially starting conversations. And again, the second part of that question, would you then see City try to accelerate this to get ahead of them and say, do you know what, here's 30, because it's still 30 million quid, that's just plucking a number out of the sky. a fee would still be a good deal for City, for Liverpool, for a Premier League team.
Of course, yeah, and because he's English, like we've all grown up and winning the Premier League is that the main thing. But I think we're seeing it more and more now. British players going abroad and they're flourishing. They're kicking on in their careers, and you know, for him to go to a massive club throughout Europe and maybe just having a change and getting out of the Premier League could be good for him. He might not want to go straight into a Premier League team after Palace, but I like what I'm seeing in British players going abroad and you know, making a name for themselves in a different country. So I think he'd be crazy not to look at interest from massive clubs around. And I think Harry Kane said it, he didn't understand how big Bayern were till he went there. So it could be the same with Marc as well.
You find out how wanted you are, don't you, when you're going on a free? I imagine that phone rings a lot more than usual.
I wish I was as wanted as him, but yeah, no, I had a couple of offers, and it is tough when, you know, you're a free agent and you're weighing up what is the best move for you, for your career and for your family. So there's a lot of factors you have to key in, but mine wasn't in January as well. I was on holiday getting to make that decision, so it made it a little bit easier being in the sun.
Before we move on, from Manchester City in particular, Chris, Antoine Semenyo, we heard Androni Iraola last week in his press conference saying that he expected him to play against Tottenham as well as Arsenal. Makes sense from a City point of view to allow him to play against Arsenal.
Good tactics from Pep, isn't it?
When do they want him to become a Manchester City player, and how close is that to happening?
I think we obviously know the clause comes to an end soon. Bournemouth have got one more game until that clause finishes. So we believe that Antoine Semenyo will play in that for Bournemouth, and then the move to City will accelerate. It's interesting, isn't it, though, because it's another player that Liverpool were looking at. So again, it's that, you know, how are Liverpool going to feel if two of their targets potentially end up moving to Manchester City by the end of the window? I don't know, I'll throw this to you again, Jeff. Semenyo, do you see that as a good fit at City? And again, if you were advising him, you know, Liverpool, Manchester City, where would you kind of see him going?
Yeah, it's tough. I really like the player. I've been watching him for a while now, and I think the attributes he has, what he's doing in that Bournemouth team is brilliant, and he definitely deserves his move. It's so hard picking between City and Liverpool because they're obviously two top clubs and have dominated over the last few years here in England. But I just look at sort of Liverpool and the players they've brought in. He might be thinking there's a lot of competition there. So maybe going to Man City is the perfect fit for him. And you know, I think learning under Pep as well is, who doesn't want to do that? You see the players he's helped improve and made even better. And I think if Semenyo's to go there and improve himself, you know, he's going to be some player when it comes to being the finished article.
Right, let's move on from Manchester City, talk about their rivals, their big neighbours, Manchester United, because it was a big day for them yesterday, wasn't it? Sacking their head coach Ruben Amorim and putting Darren Fletcher in temporary charge. Sani Rajavajula is in Manchester for us now. Sani, good morning to you. Have we got any update on who could be taking that job permanently at Old Trafford yet?
Yeah, good morning, Will. Well, no massive update just yet, but of course we do know that Darren Fletcher will be addressing the media this afternoon at 5 o'clock, and we'll have that live on Sky Sports News ahead of playing Burnley tomorrow. We believe assisting him will be Travis Binion and Alan Wright, who've both worked with him in the youth setup. Of course, Fletcher hasn't been in that role at the under-18s very long at all, but he was previously part of the club working alongside John Murtough, also looking at loans as well. So he has that experience within the club, and he'll be taking charge tomorrow. I mean, some of the names in the frame. Yesterday, Will, I spent the day on Market Street in the centre of town, and I got every single name was thrown at me. Looking at the odds at the moment, the favourite right now is Oliver Glasner, who's currently at Crystal Palace, of course. So that's one name thrown out. The next favourite, one of them is Gareth Southgate, who's available on a free, if you like. He's obviously not with a job at the moment. One of the names that was said to me a lot was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and a lot of fans said to me that was kind of a head a heart over head kind of person would like to be brought in because of the success or the way he played when he was there. But at the moment, you could almost pull out any name and they could potentially be one that United fans would entertain. I think what we understand is as well, when you think about the PSR issues that United have had as far as the headroom to bring in signings go, they've had to spend money to bring in Ruben Amorim. They've obviously paid him for the time that he's been manager, and now they've had to pay him then when he's left. So who they might bring in, again, there might not be that amount of finance to compensate another club. So then you would be looking at managers who are not working at the moment. And, you know, just to stir the pot ever so slightly, Will, if you take somebody like Gareth Southgate, his most recent experience at England, well, that's a place where obviously you're not signing players, you're bringing them in, but you're essentially working with who you've got. You're changing a culture. You're trying to get everyone on side, trying to unite them all and bring some positivity back. Well, that would be something that any future United manager would have to do. For now, that's Darren Fletcher's job, and we'll have to wait and see how he gets on. Other names thrown in that have that similar sort of connection: Michael Carrick, maybe Kieran McKenna at Ipswich Town, but all that is yet to come out in the wash. And for now, it's Darren Fletcher's job, and we'll hear what he has to say this afternoon.
Sandy, thank you very much. And you can see Darren Fletcher's first press conference after taking the interim head coach role from 5 p.m. right here on Sky Sports News today. Fletcher will lead the side into the first United match of the post-Amorim era live on Sky Sports Premier League at Strugglers Burnley. That's from 6 o'clock tomorrow. Jeff Hendrick, I just wonder how this all pans out in terms of United's transfer policy in the window. Obviously, Jason Wilcox, there are a lot of chefs in that kitchen. Omar Barada, Christopher Vavell as well, who's head of recruitment at Old Trafford. And, of course, the players who've been on the fringe, one of them being Kobbie Mainoo. We all say on the outside, you know what it's like on the inside of those walls. Clean slate, you know, everyone's got a new chance. Do you think it works like that?
Yeah, for the first day, probably, but I'm sure whoever is taking over, obviously Fletcher's taking over now, and whoever comes in the long term, they will have their opinion on certain players, but then you're lucky you get a chance where in training you might be able to change that opinion. But I know everyone's obviously screaming for Kobbie Mainoo to be getting some minutes, so I think it could be really good for him, especially coming into this World Cup. Everyone's saying he has to go out on loan and get minutes under his belt, so it could be the perfect timing for him, and after sitting around, he's ready to go.
Just finally on that, do you see Fletcher sticking Mainoo straight back in the team?
I don't see why not. I think everyone's talking about the midfield and the way it's not working. He's not really got a chance. Obviously, Fletcher knows playing midfield for Man United, and he's probably seen him come up through the ranks, and for him to put him in and maybe give him guidance and clear messages could be good for him.
Yeah, right, stay with us. Still to come on Good Morning Transfers. Eddie Howe speaks live to the media this morning. We'll bring you that news conference shortly. Before that, though, Nuno Espirito Santo has made 2 signings, both of them strikers. What could that mean for Callum Wilson's future? We'll get Jeff's thoughts on one of his former teammates next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Right, let's get to West Ham now, and their boss Nuno Espirito Santo has brought in 2 new forwards in the window so far to try and keep them in the Premier League, but he says he's after more this month.
Now we are in the moment of rebalance our squad. 2 players came in, Tati and Pablo, which I consider good options, players that can help, and that's the word that we need help. We need help from those that are coming, but we are the ones that have to improve and make the situation better.
You talk about rebalancing the squad.
Yeah.
I think the team has conceded the most goals in the league.
Yeah.
So now is the focus to sign defensive reinforcements?
Now the club is working. We are working really, really hard to operate in this transfer window. Like I said, 2 bodies in, but we still need more. We still need more. It's not only about now the offensive line. We still need to rebalance better our squad.
That was our very own Chris Reedy putting the questions to Nuno yesterday.
question,
You pushed him on the defensive reinforcements. Come on, what about some of these names that the West Ham fans can get excited about?
Oh, names, well, put me in the pressure there. Look, I think, like Nuno said, he's brought the 2 strikers in, Tati Castellanos and Pablo. Adama Traore as well is another one they're working to get in the door. But look, it's defensive reinforcements that are next. He talked about rebalancing the squad. That's been Nuno's catchphrase basically for the last few weeks now. West Ham have conceded the most goals in the Premier League. That defeat against Wolves in the weekend was an absolute disaster, wasn't it, for Nuno? That press conference yesterday actually was the most I've seen him come out fighting in a long time. It really felt like he needed to put on a bit of a show for the fans. He mentioned something that was quite interesting, I thought, yesterday. He talked about the 2 players that have come in by being brave, as in joining at this time. I guess that's because West Ham are in a really precarious situation. There's just something I wanted to ask you, Jeff. In terms of joining a team like West Ham right now, the position that they're in, is that a big decision for a player? Because they do look like they're in big danger of going down.
Yeah, it's a massive decision, to be fair.
Will it make it harder for Nuno to kind of convince players to come in?
Possibly, but if you're getting them out of a different league, country, the main place to go is to go and play in the Premier League. So that's attractive in itself. And obviously the team, they're not doing well, but it's still a big club, and some foreign players might like coming to live in London as well. It might be an attraction, but I think players will still want to come and play there. It depends if they're battling against another club who's probably safer, in a better position. That's probably the stumbling block they'll find.
I mean, I don't know how much you've seen of West Ham this season, but it does feel like defence now is what they need. Like I said, conceding 3 against Wolves on the weekend, 41 goals conceded in the Premier League. There's rumours of a new goalkeeper potentially coming in. Mads Manson came in for 20 million, benched straight away. But do you think that's where they need to target next, is defenders?
Yeah, defenders, midfielders. I'm not being bad, but I've watched West Ham and you hear the noises, and there's no good news sort of coming out of that club. No one seems to be happy or enjoying the football, whether it's the players, the fans, people working at the club. So I think they do need to change something and maybe bring in fresh faces which can brighten up and maybe kickstart the back end of the season for them.
Look, on the subject of Callum Wilson, a man that you know very well from your time at St James's Park, how will he be feeling right now? He scored, I think, 4 Premier League goals. He's only 8 of joining the 100 club, which I think you've said is at the forefront of staying in the Premier League. He's still got something to offer. He's the same age as you, Jeff. He's a spring chicken.
He's old, yeah. No, that's the main thing. I remember a few years ago, I think he was counting out how many goals he needs to score each year to get to that 100, and that's his goal, that's his target, and he's chasing that down. For him to go in there and now possibly not see any game time, he might have to make a big decision and go to a club who'll take him. But he will want it to be the Premier League. Like I said, he's chasing down that 100 club, and it won't benefit him to go to the Championship, say, or go abroad. He will want to stay and keep fighting to get them goals.
Can he still score goals in the Premier League at that level?
Yeah, that's his main attribute. He has had injuries through the seasons, but you put him on the pitch, he will be in the middle of the goal. He'd be ready to tap balls in. His movement in the box just to get ahead of a defender and all this. it's really, really good. So he can definitely do a job. It's just sort of giving him the time. I think some players need a run of games, and he's not getting that. So he's not going to be 100% with his movement and finishing. So I think that's all he needs.
Do you know what? Well, it'd be really interesting actually if he's in the squad for tonight for West Ham against Nottingham Forest, because we do know that West Ham are in discussions actually around his future, potentially to end his contract early. They brought in those two strikers. When I was in the press conference yesterday with Nuno, he said, I've had an honest discussion with Callum, and basically it kind of alluding that his time might be coming to an end. However, they kind of need all the experience and all the players that they can get right now. So yeah, I think that will be a big telling point around Callum Wilson's future, if he's in that squad tonight.
And I found it really interesting, Chris, in that presser that you were in, that Nuno was quite forceful in saying these were my players. Tati Castellanos, that he's brought in from Lazio, who, by the way, hasn't scored since September, and Pablo, young, exciting talent, but 21 years old, scoring goals for Gil Vicente in the Portuguese league. And said he had that conversation with Callum. But I mean, it's all well and good Nuno saying this. Lose tonight against Nottingham Forest, and 2 wins in 11 or 12 games. The heat is going to be fully on it.
Yeah, and you say that recruitment has been a bugbear of a lot of West Ham fans for a long time now. Who's doing the recruitment? How it's been done? Every time a new manager comes in, it feels like the squad is really sort of unbalanced with different players from different recruiting, chief of recruitments, different managers. Like you said, Nuno made a kind of a really big point as to say, I picked these two players, which, as there has been speculation around his future, to me seemed a bit of a message to say, I'm here for the long haul. Like I said, let's see what happens tonight. Let's see what happens in the next few weeks. But it was a big statement, I thought, from Nuno yesterday.
Yeah, and you're there tonight, and we can't get away from how much of a six-pointer that actually is. And you wonder clearly there is a backing from some part of the board, a major part of the board, if he's allowed to push ahead with what he's done so far.
Yeah, look, I mean...
And as the other name you mentioned, Adama Traore, who he worked with at Wolves.
These are all Nuno players. I don't think there could be a more Nuno player than Adama Traore, to be honest. He absolutely loves him. It's such a big game tonight. I don't know, Jeff, what do you think? Do you think in terms of Nuno and kind of his targets, do you think that the result matters tonight? Do you think he'll be feeling the pressure? Because yesterday in the press conference he said, it's just another game, but it feels way bigger than that. Is that just something managers say?
He's playing it down, obviously, but of course this result does mean something. If they can win tonight and gain a bit of momentum and be closer to Forest, it's great. But yeah, I'm looking at it in terms of the way he's put the statement out with the players and everything he's doing. He's obviously there hoping to be there for the long haul, but he needs to start winning games, because they will be cut adrift, and that's the main thing he needs to focus on. He's going to play it down so that the players go in a bit calm. I've been there when you're in the bottom three after Christmas and you've got hard games coming up. It's difficult, but I think you have to keep that positivity, not just in between the players, but get the fans on board. And that's probably why he said, these are my players I'm bringing in. I'm assembling my own squad, so we're ready to fight.
Right, guys, thanks for now. Still to come on Good Morning Transfers, we're going to bring you the thoughts of Mr. Eddie Howe. Will Newcastle, Jeff's old team, be active in the market this month? We'll hear from him next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Eddie Howe then has been speaking to the media this morning ahead of his side's Premier League clash with Leeds tomorrow night. We can hear from him now.
Eddie, nice to see you. Back-to-back wins for your team in the Premier League with another home game to come. Of course, another couple of home games after that in other competitions. Is there a feeling that you guys are maybe beginning to get a bit of momentum going here?
We hope so. Good feeling after the Crystal Palace game. It was a big win for us, tough opposition, tight game. Pleased to come out on the right side of it, and I think with another home game to come, that's a great thing for us. We love these evening games.
I think you said after the game on Sunday that Jacob Murphy had maybe hurt his hamstring towards the end, and that was why he came off. How has he been the last couple of weeks, and will he be involved tomorrow?
He's had a scan. There's good news on the scan, no major injury there, so I think it was probably fatigue. His physical numbers in the game were outstanding, so I think he'll be available at the moment. I think it'll be a late decision for us, but fingers crossed.
And I also wanted to ask you about the statement the club put out yesterday regarding the racist abuse suffered by Joe Willock. Obviously, it's not the first time we've seen this for him, but it's pretty depressing stuff, isn't it?
It's absolutely horrible, and it really felt for Joe to have to read that and absorb the words that were sent to him, and just his reaction again I thought was first class. It's such a shame that any football player or any sportsman or any individual has to read those words, and I can't support him enough and give him love at this moment.
Yeah, well said, Eddie Howe. Just to sort of bring it back to Newcastle in the transfer window, a little bit quiet in terms of names. Chris being the link with the move to St James's Park. I think Eddie Howe in his last press conference reiterated the fact that they're not going to be making any marquee signings. We know they've had their issues with PSR and balancing the books, but a lot of games to come and still in a great position.
Yeah, look, I think, like you said, there's kind of constant PSR issues with Newcastle that seems to be kind of pulling them back a little bit every single window. But I think what Eddie Howe will want is just I guess, more from the signings that he made in the summer. You know, you've got the likes of Wissa that's coming back. He's almost like a January signing because he hasn't been available for a lot of the season. Voltemade has made a real big impact. But Elanga as well hasn't really kick-started as probably Eddie Howe would have wanted. So they're 2 points off fifth in this kind of congested middle of the table. So I think, I imagine it will be a fairly quiet January window for Newcastle, but I think Eddie Howe he'll just want improvements from what's gone on before, because it's not been the best start to the season. I think the current squad, he can get more of them. And that's what Eddie Howe's all about, isn't he? He's a coach that gets the best out of what he's got. He's never really been that demanding for signings. So I think that's where he'll be sort of putting his concentration.
What does your old team do, Jeff? Do they roll the dice when you look at the fixtures? And again, I made this comparison with Liam Rosenior and Chelsea. Newcastle in a great position still to finish in the top 8 in the Champions League spots. As Chris has just said there, they're only 2 behind Manchester United and Chelsea, who've changed their managers. It seems like a time where you could take a bit of a gamble here. I know they're restricted, but do they go for it?
Yeah, it depends if they have money to spend. I think that's the main factor, but I think their aim at the start of the year would have been to get them Champions League spots, because that's massive for them. To do it back-to-back years is really big, and I think it helped them spend even more money. But
look what's to come, Jeff, when you look at that as well. You know, there's some real toughies around the corner, and cup semi-finals against Manchester City, Liverpool away at Anfield, Premier League. Yeah,
it's really, really congested there for them, and I suppose it will boil down to if, you know, they get a couple of injuries and then they have to, you know, force a move and bring extra bodies in. But the main thing he'll be doing is working with them on the training pitch and making sure the physios are working with all the players who have niggles and all, because if they do get a few injuries, then they'll be forced into getting players, and it might not be someone they want or they need, and that's the last thing they want to do.
How far away do you think they are of having the quality of being able to go back-to-back for qualifications for the Champions League? Because that makes all the difference in terms of the budgets going forward. Yeah, but I don't think they're far off at all. We've seen what the team and Eddie's done with them over the last few years, and I really like them. The team they've assembled, players they've brought in. You know, you look at Voltemade, Gordon, the midfield, the defenders. They're always adding to it, and I think they're really, really strong. And I can't see any club going away to play them
having a good game and enjoying it, because with the fans and the tempo the lads play at, it's scary a little bit. And Eddie's built all that and got the players all together, and it's great to see.
Yeah. Let's move on, Chris, and talk about Tottenham, because Tottenham playing Bournemouth away at the Vitality tomorrow night in the Premier League. I was at the Sunderland game on Sunday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Mohamed Kudus off injured in the first half, just as they sell Brennan Johnson to Crystal Palace, which is exactly where Johnson wants to play. Hear from Frank on that in just a second. What about some ins at Tottenham? That's what the Spurs fans desperately want to hear this morning.
Yeah, I think the names that you mentioned there, kind of going out via injury or transfer, make it really interesting for Spurs, because I think what Spurs fans are really just desperate for at the moment is some creativity and some excitement into their ranks. So, you know, Kudus, like you said, injured. Johnson, who's been a scorer of goals and a scorer of really important goals out for them as well. James Maddison, you know, out with injury. Kulusevski out with injury. You know, Solanke injured as well. Son left at the end of the season. So I think that's where we know that Thomas Frank wouldn't have let Brennan Johnson go unless that's an area they're focusing on. So I think attacking reinforcements for Tottenham are a huge priority.
Yeah, let's hear from Thomas Frank, shall we? Because he was quizzed yesterday about Brennan Johnson's departure to Crystal Palace. Here he is.
Two different situations, two different clubs. Brennan have made himself a club legend in some ways, scoring the winning goals in Bilbao, winning the fantastic Europa League trophy. Done well, were the top scorer last year, I think, in all competitions, doing well. Then Mo Kudus came in, playing on the right wing, which is also Brennan's best position. Not that he can't play to the left, best position. And then for the long term plans, there was an opportunity to sell Brennan now and give him an opportunity to try something else. So that was the right decision.
Because quite recently, similar players, if players can be similar, have similar profile, similar positions, have been sold for much more than 35 million. I wonder whether you felt the club had got the right value for him.
That is someone who's very good at negotiating prices and buying and selling players, much better than me. So I think that's the question for them, if I'm fair.
Jeff, could Brennan Johnson going to Crystal Palace come back to haunt Tottenham?
Yeah, if they don't find a replacement, definitely. I think with Tottenham, they just need to sort out the home form first. Yeah, you know, with Kudus being injured, they need to replace him, but the home form's not been good enough this year, and that's something they need to address more than maybe getting a player in.
Jeff, I'll go one step further than that. It's so flat there. I was there on Sunday, and they're sort of between a rock and a hard place of, you know, when you're 1-0 up in a game, trying to see it out and actually turn on the style, because, you know, those Spurs fans want so much more. And again, I make the comparison of Chelsea and Newcastle. They're in a position where they're not far away from those top four places somehow, and they're not far away from the top 8 of the Champions League spots as well.
Yeah, they're close. Like I said, if they can turn that home form around, it'll be a big improvement. And like I like Thomas Frank. I like when he does interviews, he's quite open and honest, and what he done at Brentford and all has been brilliant. But it just shows maybe the step up to going to a bigger club and the sort of scrutiny you're under. He really needs the team to perform, and they've done well, like you said, but I think they need to go up a gear now and try and chase them European spots.
If you look at two players that Spurs have wanted in the last couple of windows, Eze, they were desperate for, went to Arsenal. Semenyo, we know they've been tracking for a long time, now going to City. This is the problem for Tottenham at the moment. They're obviously identifying quality players, two players who would have made a massive difference, maybe even more of a difference to Tottenham than they would have made to Arsenal and Man City respectively. But we just know they can't compete in terms of a wage front. Fees maybe, but especially wages, they can't obviously compete with those clubs on, or they won't sort of break their structure for, we're led to believe. But also at the moment, you know, if you're fighting against Arsenal, Manchester City, it's just really tough for Spurs at the moment, and that's the kind of the problem they face, I think.
Yeah. Right, plenty more on the way for you this morning on Good Morning Transfers, including the Brighton boss Fabian Herzler, and we'll be taking a closer look at what another one of Jeff's former teams, Burnley, need to do to stay in the Premier League. See you in a few minutes. Right, we are taking you back to 2003 today, on this day when Yakubu joined Portsmouth on loan from Maccabi Haifa, and what a time he had under Harry Redknapp, reaching double figures in consecutive Premier League seasons before Middlesbrough lured him to Teesside for £7.5 million, and no doubt he is a lasting legend at Portsmouth down at Fratton Park. Right, Pascal Gross returned to Brighton from Borussia Dortmund last week in a deal worth £1.2 million. But could there be more transfer activity this January at the Amex? We can hear now from Fabian Herzler.
With him coming in, does that mean that there's the potential for other people to go out during this window?
At the moment, no.
You're quite happy with where you're at in terms of signings in and out?
At the moment, like I always say, we are happy with the squad we have. Of course, we always try to analyze the transfer market. We always try to analyze the individual situation from the players. But overall, at the moment, I'm quite happy.
Does it make sense to wait towards the end of the window, where they got the FA Cup, and particularly with the other, maybe the younger players who might potentially go out on loan at some stage? I'm thinking the Harry Howells, whoever.
Of course, in the window, a lot of things can happen, especially more towards the end. A lot of things can happen. So, therefore, we have to be patient. We have to analyze the situation. We have to get an understanding. Do we need a player? Do we need to replace an injured players? How bad are the injuries? Which players coming back? And then we have to make decisions.
Right, guys, before we get stuck into, that badge very well, Jeff, your old team, Burnley. Some news coming out of Crystal Palace. They are assessing right wing-back options this month, but Sacha Boey is not thought to be one of them. We mentioned his name a few times over the last few days. The club open to further improving their squad if the right opportunities arise. We hear that a lot, don't we? But Boey not involved in those conversations. Palace are not currently considering the Bayern Munich defender as an option to pursue. Jeff, where do we start with Burnley, your old team? 11 games without a win. Firstly, at this stage of the season, with the recruitment that happened over the summer, did they roll the dice now? Did they gamble, or are a side of them already thinking about what they might do in the Championship? Is that too negative a way to spin it?
Yeah, I think it's too negative. I think roll the dice if the money's there. Like I said before, there was one season we came out of the Christmas period, and I don't know if we were bottom or second bottom. I think we were maybe on 11, 12 points. But the mood in our camp was it will turn once we get that first win, and then we had a lot of hard games coming up, and then eventually we got that win again. I think it was against a top team, and we just put a run of games together and found ourselves safe with a few games to go. And I think if you have that belief, maybe bringing a player or two in will help, but definitely they'll be still believing they can do it.
Those Burnley fans absolutely love you. You had 4 really good years there, and I know there was some ups and some downs, but mainly some big highs under Sean Dyche when you were there. When you actually look at the last 12 seasons, and we were doing this, Chris, before we came on air, I had to double check it, but 7 of the last 12 seasons, they've either gone up or gone down. How hard is that when it comes to the recruitment team?
Yeah, I think they done it the first year with Sean, where they went up, back down, maybe added to the squad, built again, and then when I signed the year, they went up. A few of us came in, and they added in the January as well, and then to stay in the Premier League was massive, and then he just kept building from there, and he had 6, 7 successful seasons. So one thing they don't want to do is go up, down, up, down, up, down for a few years, because it is hard to get out of that Championship. So maybe, like you said, rolling the dice and giving themselves the best chance they have. And
look, they've got some exciting new owners. They have spent money, haven't they, Chris, over the summer? I mean, even Ugo Chukwu from Chelsea was 20-something million pounds. Broja from Chelsea as well, 20 million quid. Look, Sunderland was spending big. Leeds dipped in as well. That they will be looking at the 2 other new boys and thinking, hold on, they're pulling away from us here.
That's exactly it, and that's the kind of situation we've seen at West Ham as well. They've really gone for it this January window. They have rolled the dice, 2 strikers in. We know they're going to secure more players as well. I guess, Jeff, the question I had to ask you, mate, it was if you're in a squad in January and you really are struggling, what do you kind of want? Do you want the manager to bring in fresh faces, or do you kind of want him to show a bit of faith in you and kind of have faith that you'll get them out of the situation. What's the balance there?
Yeah, I suppose if I was one of them players who wasn't starting, then I'd want them to keep faith in the squad and have a chance, I suppose. But you know, if they're going to bring a player in, it needs to be a player who comes into their starting 11 and does affect the squad who's out there on the pitch. So it's a difficult choice to make, but you know, there's probably some players there who are training hard for a couple of months and not being given a chance. So they've got to probably be brave and knock on the manager's door and say, you know, we need a win, we need a change in performance. I'm ready, I've been working hard. And you might tell them to go away, or you know, he might put them in. So I think the players just need to be brave and ask for that chance.
What about someone like Callum Wilson? I stole your word, sorry, Will.
You've got him on you know, the perfect fit, isn't it? Someone like Callum.
Of course, yeah, and you know, I don't want to do down Callum's deal or anything, but I think it's a pay-as-you-play, so you know, it could suit the club, and he probably might be a bit closer to home, but if you can bring him in and utilise him and players feeding him, you know, goal scoring chances. I think his record stands for itself, having 92 Premier League goals. Like, he will put it in the back of the net.
Yeah. Well, will he be keen? That man, Scott Parker, will he be in that office now thinking, come on, I need a bit of help here? They've got Manchester United, Darren Fletcher, they're going to have a boost. Then they've got Liverpool in the Premier League. And then it comes to Tottenham as well.
I'm more thinking about now, after you asked about Callum Wilson, Ashley Barnes not going to be happy with me there. But yeah, no, they've got big games coming up. But I think they're the better games because they're not a free hit, but you can just go out and just have a crack at them, I think. And that's the way they'll certainly be looking at it.
Jeff, top work today. Chris, great to see you. Don't forget, Good Morning Transfers returns tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. Former Bournemouth midfielder Dan Gosling in the studio with us for that one. Before that, we're back at midday. Jody Morris and Alan Smith will be here with us. Up next, a full roundup of the day's transfers as well at 4 and 7 later on today. It's Fan Club next. Jay Bothroyd is here.